Today we are, yes, and we've just started the recording. Today we have just celebrated Thanksgiving, a season where our focus is on gratitude. And if everyone would please mute yourselves, that would be very helpful.
Why
don't you open this up to the full screen?
We're muted.
And we're going to mute a couple of other people. So we've just celebrated the season of Thanksgiving, where our emphasis is on gratitude. And now we turn toward Advent and preparing our hearts and minds for Christmas, a time of giving and an appropriate response to gratitude for everything that we have been given. So it's timely that our class today will be about the Alternative Giving Catalog, where we will hear from several of our friends at Glenn about a wide range of opportunities, local and abroad, to support the missions of Glenn Memorial. Today's program will be led, as you may know, by Joan Lord, who has laid down the law to me that this introduction is to be short. The class today is about the Alternative Giving Catalog, Joan said, so I will follow her request and make this introduction brief. Joan is known to everyone in the new class as an active member, serving on the planning committee along with Gerald, and being present physically or remotely nearly every Sunday of the year. While you no doubt know Joan in this context, you may not know about her professional background. Joan has worked at every level of education. After earning her undergraduate degree at Vanderbilt, she worked as a secondary school teacher in Nashville. Following graduate work at Florida State and Georgia State, she taught for 4 years at Atlanta Junior College, which is now Atlanta Metropolitan College. And from there, she went to Georgia State University, where our paths first crossed. She has held numerous administrative positions within the university system of Georgia, including interim vice chancellor, interim university president, and vice president for academic affairs. Then, for 20 years, she worked at the Southern Regional Education Board, where she brought policy together with practice at every level of education. Joan has twin daughters, Kristen and Shelley, who were 3 years old when she came to Georgia State, and that alone makes my heart kind of start pounding, thinking about everything that would have been involved in rearing 3-year-old twins and starting in a new responsible position at Georgia State. Shelley now has 2 boys, one 15 and one nearly 12, though clearly Joan is not old enough to be a grandmother of teenage boys. So without further ado, I'm going to now turn the program over to Joan.
Sandra, you've been most generous. Thank you. I'm betting that we have all just eaten our last, and we hope our last, of the leftovers of Thanksgiving dinner, and we're just about had our fill of Thanksgiving weekend football. And even so, it's hard for me to register that today is the first day of Advent. Let me get us started with some slides here, Gerald. Right. I'm done. Give us just a second here. Can you see slides?
Not yet.
Okay, we've got to share our screen. Let's see about sharing a screen, Sandra.
We are looking, we've made Gerald co-host.
You need
Yeah.
to first open your document and then share your screen.
Okay, we've opened the document. And where's the share this? There's the share the screen. Okay, now we gotta do that. And now we're gonna open the document. Now, do you see the document?
Not yet.
You have to click share. There's a second step to it. You click on the screen you want to share, and then you click on share. That is part of the prompt. For Zoom.
Okay, hang on, we'll get there.
We'll get there.
Yep.
Click on which first? Share
Click
first?
share, click the document, and then click share again, but share in the prompt and not on the actual screen, if that makes sense. In other words, when you click on share, you pick the screen that you want to share,
Yes,
and then a dialog box is still sitting there saying, waiting for you to click on share. There you go.
There you go.
Yay. Beautiful.
now, now we should be sharing.
And it looks lovely.
Thank you. Several weeks ago, when I sat down to write the opening lines for the Alternative Giving Catalog, which we're about to talk about today, I wrote, in the opening season of Advent, Christians are called upon once again to experience with great anticipation the coming of the Christ child who brings peace, hope, love, and joy. Yet, all around, we see friends, neighbors, and strangers whose lives are in turmoil, whose grief and pain are almost unbearable. I didn't know when I wrote those words, grief and pain, almost unbearable, that between then and today, college students in Idaho and Virginia would die in violent crimes. We'd hear again about COVID-19 lockdowns in China, see another brazen rampage on a gay bar, this time in Colorado, shudder at the senseless massacre of co-workers at a Walmart, draw up in fear at the looming catastrophe at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear facility, and witness even more Ukrainian refugees sheltering against winter without heat, food, and water. And then images would come of devastating drought and famine in Sudan and earthquake in Indonesia, and overwhelming blizzards in our own Northeast. It's easy to become dulled by such news, even to the point of feeling helpless from all the chaos in our lives. What difference can I make? And how do I approach the season of hope, love, and joy in such a chaotic world? I wish I had the answers. This is the season, this is the Sunday that we celebrate hope, which the Christ child brings, and we certainly need hope this Sunday. Let's focus there today. Let us pray. Oh God, as we open the Advent season on this Holy Sunday, we pray together that we remember hope is not a wish. Hope is seeing into a better future for all your creation in spite of all the chaos we see, and learning to take the steps of love and faith into that future with your guidance and help. Give us clearer sight, light our paths, and draw us closer together as a community of faith. Amen. Glenn Memorial's Transforming the World team believes that in working together, the people of Glenn can and do make a difference. Now we need to pause as we hear those words, particularly after hearing that opening litany of trouble and sorrow. Do we really make a difference? I believe that all we do at Glenn does make a difference, remarkable things happen in the name of this church, and we all need to know more about what we all do. And we'll hear more this morning. As you'll recall from our summer Sunday school series, the Transforming Team was created a year or so ago from a number of committees at Glenn. The new team set priorities to begin its work: homelessness, hunger, and refugee relief, while keeping Glenn Memorial's longstanding convictions on global education, racial and social justice, and environmental stewardship. And Dawn Francis Tuning and I worked together to base the catalog on these priorities. We issued a call to the whole team for suggestions for catalog entries, searching for ones that met the priorities, were close partners with Glenn's outreach programs, and whose needs weren't already funded in the church budget. We then added a few United Methodist global missions that carried out the priorities, and very soon we had a list that the whole team was enthusiastic about. I hope you will be too. 8 programs related to Glenn's ministries, 7 ministries curated from the long listings of the Greater United Methodist Church. And I think you'll agree that they all represent organizations that have looked to a better future and are taking steps to get there, pursuing hope. I have with me today a group of people more knowledgeable about the catalog entries than I am, and it's now time for me to let them tell you what's included. I hope Ben Ladner has been able to join us in the meantime. Ben, are you with us? I was hoping Ben would be able to join us. Ben is our youth director, grew up at Glenn, and I'm sure many of you know him and his parents. As we began identifying entries for the catalog, I asked Ben to lead the youth in thinking about what should be included in the catalog. I wanted the catalog to express the passions of the youth, not just the longings of our seniors. He was quick to take me up on it, and they yielded great recommendations. 2 of those we'll talk about first in our discussion of the entries in the catalog. The first is the Ocean Conservancy and Trees Atlanta. We'll start with Ocean Conservancy. I heard some rumbling. Was that you, Ben?
No.
All right, I will lead off then and talk about the Ocean Conservancy. It has its mission, a healthy ocean, healthy animals, and justice for the environment. But the work of the Conservancy is in overcoming the damaging effects of climate change, pollution, animal extinction, and diseases like red tide and those killing coral reefs. They know the importance of the ocean to the planet, and they work with civic leaders, scientists, and political leaders globally trying to resolve scientific, political, and policy problems. We've set up an ask for donations in the catalog so that people can think about their gifts as saving animals or coral reefs or beaches they frequent. They can gift their friends and families with cards indicating that they have contributed to the Ocean Conservancy in their honor to help save Florida manatees or Georgia sea turtles or beaches at Cape Cod or coral reefs at Key West, all the while helping to steward the great waters of the creation. In short, a $50 or $100 gift through the catalog to the Conservancy could be distributed as 5 gifts to family members, indicating the donor has contributed for each of them in honor of special interests. The donor just has to write a note to each one and stuff it in a stocking. Trees Atlanta is at its heart stewardship. And it's also youth recommended, yes. It set a goal in 2020 of planting 1 million trees by 2030. And here we see what Atlanta looks like with 150,000 additional trees planted. But the pandemic has set it behind by 50,000. By the end of this year, we should have had 200,000 planted, but there are only 150,000 planted. They need help closing the gap, which comes to the catalog. Trees Atlanta is more than just planting trees. It takes the word education in its mission seriously, and you know that's going to catch my attention, and works with youth extensively. And so its work takes hold and lasts. Our hope is to raise enough in donations to plant a neighborhood tree to signify Glenn's place in Atlanta, now that church property is within the city. And then we suggest many gifts of seedlings to be planted all over the city to represent our outreach throughout the city in our missions. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Dawn Francis Tuning, my partner in the catalog development. She's been at Glenn a long time. I first knew her as the Friday night skating lady who made skating very cool at the YAD. And she's now active at Glenn's Environmental Caucus. Glenn, tell us about GIPL.
Well, as you can see, Georgia Interfaith Power and Light is what GIPL stands for, and their mission is connecting faith, community, and planet. They will be 20 years old in 2023, and Glenn has a good long history with GIPL. One of the things that they help churches with is to check for insulation, to make sure that you're getting the best power bang for your buck with gas or electricity, depending on what your heat source is. And in our case, we knew the little chapel was incredibly drafty and cold, and we thought that was a good place to start, but they really wanted to start in the sanctuary, so we did. And it was an incredible walkthrough, very eye-opening for me. I went personally with the team, as did Michael Black. I believe Lynn Spino was also with us, and Lydia Stewart Castles may also have joined us. But we took a tour from not just the sanctuary level, but we went all the way down in the bowels, so to speak, below the choir loft and below the choir room. I had occasion to walk past OC's office and saw what Emery was storing there with OC's desk, and kind of went ballistic. Pulled out all the cards I had to play with Campus Services, and they cleaned it up real fast. It was filled with pesticides and things of that nature, and I think they had just forgotten it. And I was pretty relentless, and they took care of it within 10 days. And I was really happy about that. And then after that, everybody started cleaning up their stuff and shifting it and storing it better. So it kind of had an avalanche effect in a way, but in a good way. So we did get to the little chapel in 2013. We climbed up above the chapel roof. We climbed into the chapel roof, sorry. And we actually were able to measure, gauge, and then again, work with Emory Campus Services to make sure that they knew what we were doing. We entered into a MOU, Method of Understanding, and actually got the little chapel vastly improved in terms of insulation. So it's not as cold. It's kind of a drafty room anyway with all the windows, but we mitigated a tremendous amount of the heat loss that building had, and a new envelope was created. So it really was a tremendous savings for us. And part of what GIPL does, they've done the same thing for Emory Presbyterian Church down the street. They've worked with a very large number of faith organizations throughout the Atlanta area and beyond. So I've had direct personal experience with GIPL. It is one of my go-tos for contributions every year. And they are and continue to be on a mission. One of the years that we were a part of it, we actually won an award. And that's when we got to meet the board that was GIPL. And I realized one of my old neighbors who used to live on the street were the big movers and shakers. And it was Carol and I believe Woody Barnett. I'm hesitating on the Woody. I know it was Carol. And they've also had Glenn connections in the past. So it's just amazing how the circle of life just continues to expand, and yet old connections have new meaning. So GIPL is going strong. We have been involved for many years. We have done webinars with them. We hosted the forum at Glenn Memorial in 2018. We participated in the Glen Chattahoochee River cleanup, and we have not stopped being involved with GIPL. And nor will we ever, because we feel like we have a debt to them well beyond the terms of the MOU, which is long since passed, because we're still reaping the benefits from our efforts with them with our own buildings. And so more of our activities. As you can see, those are Glenn members. Lynn Spino is right there in the foreground. John Wiley, I believe, is in this picture. Brent is in this picture. I could go on and on and on, but we have and will continue to have a great relationship with GIPL.
What's the ask, Dawn?
Well, they are starting a new fundraiser because, well, that's what people need to do when they're an organization such as this. So they have a $30,000 fundraising campaign underway now that provides us with an opportunity to support GIPL directly. And I encourage everyone, in fact, I hope that everyone considers faithfully a contribution to GIPL.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.
And now I have the opportunity to talk to Glenn about Lost and Found. This is a new opportunity for Glenn and one that I'm very excited about. And I've had an opportunity to talk to some of the folks at Lost and Found. This organization provides support for unhoused LGBTQ plus teens and young adults ages 18 to 25 with the goal to end homelessness among this population and give them hope. It shelters these youth often after their parents have rejected them, and staff members provide them with support and help them to learn to live independently. In addition to Ocean Conservancy and Trees Atlanta, this is the third program that the youth strongly suggested, and it was also recommended by members of the Draw the Circle Wide Caucus here at Glenn. I also understand that the proceeds of this year's Gay Pride t-shirt sales went to this group. I believe that was our first outreach to the group. Lost and Found Youth runs a youth center where it provides meals and transitional housing. And it operates a thrift shop that does more than raise money for operations. Here, the youth learns a wide variety of business skills, learning to become independent. The youth facility serves 600 meals a month and depends on donations from all of them. Our hope is to supply meals periodically for these 20 youth in the transitional facility. A milestone goal is to serve meals for 20 youth 6 times during 2023, and I'd like it to even be more often than that. I'm planning to become involved in this program. I love to cook, and I hope others of you will join me, giving, but also in preparing and delivering meals and learning more about this program. We don't have to cook all these meals. They accept restaurant cards when home cooking isn't feasible, but this is a program that I think is an exciting new opportunity for Glenn. And next, I bring you Deborah Marlowe, who I believe has held every lay position you can name at Glenn, certainly everyone I can name at Glenn. And she's led 2 mission trips to Cambodia. I'm introducing Deborah Marlowe. She's going to talk to us about 2 programs she's deeply involved in, missions in Cambodia, and then following that, a snack in a backpack. So Deborah, lead us off with missions in Cambodia.
Thank you, Joan. Do I have my camera on? Yeah, great.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and see me?
Yes.
Okay. Both of the ministries that I'm going to talk about focus on children who are at risk. First, talking about the Street Children Ministry in Cambodia, and to provide a moment of background information, Glenn has been involved in Cambodia for over 20 years, starting with our support of Marilyn Chan, who attended Glenn while she was in missionary training school over 20 years ago. And we most recently, over the past decade or so, have been involved in providing scholarships for girls and young women to attend school, both from the elementary age going up through college. And then more recently, Glenn provided substantial funding for a new dorm that was built for university students, a dorm that was close to a university near the Vietnam border. Over the years, we have responded to specific needs that GBGM in Cambodia has, ranging from things like the Women's Livelihood Project to pandemic response, flood response, and so forth. And this year, their request to us was for support for the street ministry for those children. And for those of you that have traveled in Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, you know what it feels like, as do I, to be walking down the street and for all of these children to suddenly surround you and to be asking you to buy things, or to be on a bus where they are knocking on the windows and asking you to buy things. In Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, many of these children live in what's referred to as the slum area, and specifically the dump, which is a dump in more than one way, both in terms of the physical appearance and in the way that children and adults are valued or not valued more particularly. In my last trip to Cambodia with others from Glenn, we had the opportunity to spend a day with the missionary Clara Biswas, who has focused her ministry up until retirement a couple of years ago on these street children. And we engaged with art projects with the children, and had a moment of seeing, as you see here, some of their joy and happiness when we asked them to draw things that represented hope and happiness to them. When Clara retired a couple of years ago, the Cambodian Methodist Mission decided to consolidate its street children ministry and partnered with a group called the Cambodia Student and Children Fund Organization, CSCFO, an NGO in Cambodia. And the reason for doing this was to provide a higher impact in educating children in the belief that education is the way out of poverty. So in that regard, GBGM has been involved in training teachers, training administrators, repairing the dorms and the classrooms and so forth. And their specific ask for us this year is to provide assistance with scholarship funds for the children, uniforms, shoes, and Christmas gifts. Again, reaching out to the most vulnerable children in Cambodia. And now I'll turn to Snack in a Backpack, which a lot of you are familiar with. Snack in a Backpack feeds children who are food insecure, who are at risk particularly of hunger on the weekends when they receive free food during the school lunch programs and breakfast programs, but do not necessarily have food available on the weekends. And so as you see here, we set up and pack food on Thursdays that is delivered to the schools on Fridays. We started Snack in a Backpack in April of 2011 with 50 children as a pilot project. We now are serving approximately 300 children each week during the school year. We serve several elementary schools in the area, including Hope Hill Elementary in the Old Fourth Ward, a school in the Peoplestown area, and another one, S.L. Lewis, that is in the College Park area. In addition, we serve the students, about 41 at the Global Village Project. And we also serve 11 Congolese refugee families, which among them have over 50 children. You most often think about Snack in a Backpack as coming on Thursdays to set up and pack, and that is crucial to making our operation work. But there are lots of things that are invisible to most people that are also important. Picking up food from the Atlanta Community Food Bank, unloading those trucks of food, grocery shopping for things we can't find at the food bank, making the deliveries to the schools, keeping track of our inventory, recruiting volunteers, ordering food, and so forth. The specific ask this year for Snack in a Backpack is that we need assistance, one, in all of the fruit and produce that we deliver. We are very committed to including at least 2 pieces of fruit to each child each week. And for the families that we serve, providing additional produce. And these are things that we cannot regularly obtain from the Atlanta Community Food Bank on a consistent basis, or they're not items that are appropriate for our children. The other thing that we are asking for assistance in is funding the delivery of food to one school in particular. We have a lot of volunteer drivers that we could still use more for the schools that are closer to Glenn. But for SL Lewis, that is in the College Park area, we do not at this time have someone who is a volunteer able to drive on a regular basis there. And so they send their parent liaison to Glenn. And when we found out that this person was doing this on her own time and with no compensation for gas money, driving what is in essence a 40-mile round trip on Thursdays to do this, we started providing a stipend of about $50 per trip, per round trip, actually. And so these are the particular things that we're focusing on. Many of you came to the fundraisers that Glenn collaborated with In-Town Ministries in for many years. In-Town made the decision a couple of years ago to focus exclusively on its own need. And we've been fortunate to be able to survive in the proceeds of those fundraising projects. But at this point, we need to add additional resources to our funding. And so that is the reason for these particular requests.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And now we move to one more of our entries, the Emory University project on Untold Stories and Disenfranchised Populations. Is Brent with us, Brent Huckabee?
I am.
All right, Brent, I will call upon you, our very own associate pastor, to tell us about Glenn's engagement with this very important project.
Awesome. Thank you. Good to be with everybody this morning. I want to thank Joan and Don for their fantastic work on the catalog this year. The Untold Stories and Disenfranchised Populations Task Force was started in 2019 at Emory as a way to tell and honor the stories of 2 specific populations: the enslaved persons who had ties to Emory and the indigenous peoples on whose land Emory's campus was erected. And that quote there that John John Force kind of gets at it says, while we can't change Emory's history, we can improve its legacy. And that's kind of the way it started with President Fenves was we need to recognize where we've been and where we started, the good and the bad, and move forward trying to both make amends and honor what has been there and what we can. There's kind of 2 particular things. Task Force developed recommendations coming out of that to do a couple of things: to honor enslaved persons whose labor contributed to the construction of Emory, award scholarships to attend Emory to descendants of those enslaved persons, to memorialize indigenous peoples who previously lived on land now owned by Emory, and to expand existing curricular offerings focused on the legacies of slavery and indigenous populations. So one of the first things that they've been working on is the Twin Memorials Project. And this is a project aimed at erecting 2 memorials, one on the Oxford campus and one on the Atlanta campus, that would not be twin in the sense that they would be the same memorial, but twin in the sense that they would connect to one another, that you could go to both and would see similar things that would tie them together. They put a task force together to get ideas. They worked on that, and then they took those ideas to an architectural firm that has now come back with a couple of different ideas. They've had listening sessions from the community. Carol Allums and I were able to attend one. I think some others from Glenn may have been able to go to some others. Their ideas are beautiful. They are large. The way they put it was they wanted them to be unavoidable as you walked through campus. They wanted you to have to go and see them and reckon with them, and so they're fantastic. Some of them are actually, one or two of the ideas for the Atlanta campus are actually here on the front lawn of the church. They would be kind of not connected to Glenn, but a part of our kind of area here. And so they're working on those in the hopes to have kind of final ideas, I think, in the next year, and then begin on those. They're also looking at what they're calling an indigenous language path. So there's a working group that is looking on ways to honor the Muskogee tribe that on whose land we sit, and find ways to put things on campus that would, again, honor and force us to kind of come to terms with where we are and how we landed here and what we did and what we can do. Yeah, the way they put it was proposals for landscape and other artists to design physical reminders on the Oxford Atlanta campuses that highlight Muskogee land and knowledge in relation to the land and history. And so there are two task force kind of under the larger task force that are working on those things. And so what the Racial Justice Caucus asked for the alternative giving catalog is that we kind of participate in this financially. And I think as Joan had on that last slide, there are a couple different ways we can do that. The biggest one is going to be the scholarships, giving to the Remembrance scholarships that will go to the descendants of the enslaved persons who whose labor built the campuses where Emory now stands. They've already started giving away some of those scholarships and hope to increase that as they move forward. Some of the money could also go towards these memorials and silent spaces that are part of the Twin Memorial and the Indigenous Language Path. And so this is a way to help Emory, on whose land our church exists, both honor and remember these groups that were such a big part of Emory's history, even if up until now their story has not been told.
Thank you, Brent. I think this is an important story for us to become involved in the days ahead. And it's important for us to recognize just how important this story will become as the days move ahead and these memorials begin to be built. And for us to recognize it really does include us as well.
Yes, for sure. And not just as Glenn, but our Methodist history with Emory having been
that's right.
Methodist
That's exactly
institution.
right.
We very
That's
much have a part to play in this.
That's exactly right. As we go back and look at this map, I'll just call it out very quickly. This map is from Emory's website, and the sort of lime green piece through the middle of the map of Georgia shows the tract from the Muskogee Nation that was quote traded by the state of Georgia from the Muskogee Nation, essentially for not much at all. In compensation in 1821, and granted out to various entities, one of which was to Emory. And it runs from essentially Vienna to North Decatur. And so all of that land was taken, and the Muskogee Nation across their Trail of Tears to Oklahoma lost about half of their population. So it was an extremely costly treaty for the Muskogee Nation. So it really is a very tough story for us to have to deal with. Thank you very much, and we'll move on now to one more story, and then we'll get to some other global mission stories. I want to talk to you about the children that Glenn has supported for a number of years, and you've heard me talk about them before. We've supported children in Zimbabwe since about 2012. There are 69 children that we've supported with scholarships at the Munyarari primary and secondary schools, both of which are missions of the United Methodist Church. But these fees that we support them with from our church budget do not include uniforms. These children are largely low-income students, many orphans of HIV/AIDS, living in extended families in their communities. The uniforms make it possible for Glen scholars, as they proudly call themselves, to fit in with the other children in the school in spite of their social circumstances. Our agreement with the school is to raise funds for uniforms through the catalog every year. So far, we've managed to raise enough money to outfit our students with new or hand-me-down uniforms. But this year, coming out of COVID-19 lockdowns, all 69 students need uniforms at about $60 each. That's a heavy lift, and I don't need to say any more. We've also tried to help the school as a whole advance each year. We've built classrooms, science labs, we've furnished technology labs and technology teaching facilities. But this year's request from the school will bring a chuckle. They want a fish pond. I knew I'd get a chuckle. Like this one at the neighboring school. At first, I thought it was a pretty good idea. Then I literally woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, thinking that is a terrible idea. I'm sure I woke Gerald up. Messy, smelly, too much water. They have droughts in Zimbabwe. What were they thinking, and how will I ever explain this to the new class? Well, I immediately went to the fount of all perfect knowledge, the internet, and discovered the truth. And my first instinct was right. Fisheries are a joint brainchild of the Ministry of Education and Agriculture to teach children about raising fish as a part of a national fish hatchery program aimed at addressing nationwide food shortages, returning fish to the nation's overfished rivers, creating real jobs, and developing an exportable resource. It will use one of the few resources the country has, an abundance of dammed water. Zimbabwe is rich in rivers and dams, one of the few resources they have. Each school must raise $2,500 in installation costs to get its pond. Glen Memorial seeks to sponsor these expenses through catalog donations. It's a stretch, but it's worth the ask. And you might ask, before you're willing to give, do we know it works? The Agriculture Ministry set up pilots in 2018, 4 years ago, in similar areas to Munyurari, and they have already shown reduced food insufficiency in the community where the fish are sold, and declining mortality rates now, from increases in protein in the diet. In addition, if this effort takes off, it promises jobs of many kinds and an economic boost for the country. Here is hope. Gerald wants me to say it trains the kids all along the way, and then they're able to be hired into these hatcheries. Now, at last, I want to call on Mary Lou Greenwood Boyce, who is a longtime Glen member and who works for the General Board of Global Ministries, and she will tell you about worldwide missions of the United Methodist Church that are included in the catalog and why we chose them. Mary
That's
Lou?
right. Thank you very much, and it's great to see you all. Let me start by saying the Advance, which is what I direct at Global Ministries, is the United Methodist Giving Channel for mission. We have 788 projects, most of which have come through ideas from local churches or annual conferences or bishops about needs in their area. We've selected 7 for inclusion in the catalog, and I'll tell you just a word about each. The Appalachian Ministry Network may seem a curious inclusion in an alternative giving catalog for Glen, given our location in such a metropolitan area. But many of our church, through education or through their upbringing, have deep roots in Appalachia. Appalachia covers 13 states and is represented by over 25 million people. North Georgia Conference is part of the Appalachia region, that part up near Dalton and the north area above the city. People in Appalachia live in deep poverty. They say that when the nation gets a cold, Appalachia gets pneumonia. It's an area that has been deeply impacted by the harvesting and processing of natural resources like coal, and has been struck with a number of environmental issues resulting from climate change. The United Methodist Appalachian Ministry Network is actually a direction of the General Conference in 1972 to try to assist that area, particularly in its churches, toward a healthy state. This particular program gives grants to reduce hunger and poverty in the region to United Methodist organizations, churches, and annual conferences, and is doing really good work with very little money. And so I've put that forward as one knowing the connection to Appalachia that so many of our congregation members have. I'd like now to skip down the list to talk about the Global AIDS Fund. This was established in 2004 to combat the HIV and AIDS global pandemic. We're working on prevention, education, and treatment. And right now working particularly on awareness, counseling, and testing for pregnant women, youth, and young adults in an effort to stop this preventable disease and the death that it causes. Joan mentioned in Zimbabwe School that we support. Many of those children are the orphans of parents who have died from HIV and AIDS. The Bishop Yambasu Agriculture Initiative is a relatively new initiative of Global Ministries, and this is an advance of Global Ministries. It is the brainchild of Bishop John Yambasu, whose vision was for church properties in Africa to help the churches become self-sustaining. Bishop Yambasu died in a traffic accident just a few years ago, and we took on his vision to promote this opportunity in Africa, and that's where our focus is right now. We're working with churches in a number of the Africa annual conferences, and we're helping them to use their church property to raise animals and to raise crops, which will then be sold to market, increasing the household livelihoods of church members and those in the community, and lessening food insecurity, which is rampant and, as you know, can be inconsistent in various regions depending on climate crisis. So we're doing some wonderful training and development work, as well as providing seeds and broiler chickens and little pigs to help people in the African churches have some both personal sustenance and then economic advancement. The environmental sustainability.
Mary
Yes.
Lou, can we get you to say a word or two about maybe one more? Because we need to leave a little bit of time for discussion.
Okay, why don't I talk about UMCOR, which, as you know, was started in the 1940s during and after World War II to assist refugees there in Europe and in Asia. The Global Migration Program continues to assist refugees all over the country, all over the world, and including doing significant work in the Ukrainian area this year. The international and U.S. disaster response recovery, you're probably most familiar with those programs in that they respond to disasters such as war, civil unrest, and climate matters like hurricane and tornado.
Okay. I really appreciate that. And these are really important missions. And all of these are listed on the website under Global Ministries and UMCOR on the website, and are included in our website, or in our catalog. Before we open for discussion, I want you to know how you can access the catalog, because it is actually already published. If you go to church today, you'll be able to get a printed copy in the worship service. And if you go to any of these websites, you can find it today, right now. just follow a link or two and it will pop up, glenumc.org//give. If you can't see it, if your screen is obscured like mine is, that's the way you get there. But I would say to you that before you make your first donation, double check with yourself to make sure that you've made your pledge to the church for this year. Not much good happens at the church without the full strength of the faith community. Keep Glen strong. And remember that the church budget funds not just the buildings and grounds and staff, but many important programs, including 14 mission outreach programs that are not included in the catalog, ones that we fund and tend to fund year in and year out. And they are very important to the ministry of the church. And then after that, consider these very important seasonal giving opportunities using a paper form, either printed from the online catalog or one that you can print off from the paper catalog, and then drop them off at church or mail them in. Now, of course, these are all charitable tax deductions. And early next week, you'll be able to use an online form and make the whole transaction online, but it's not quite ready yet, and that will take until early next week. And now I want to leave a little time for discussion and see what the class has to say at this point, and any questions you might have for anybody on the panel. I think a couple of people, Dawn might have gone to church so she can hand out catalogs to those at the worship service, but I would be very interested in your comments in the next few minutes. Questions for Mary Lou or Deborah or me about anything that we talked about or anything about the catalog?
I'd just like to say thank you for this presentation. I think it's been so much more than we've done with the catalog in the past, and I hope it's available to the entire congregation on the website. I assume it will be.
It will be. It is today. It is
Thank you,
available
Joe.
today. And we will make it widely available and widely apparent through the Glen Notes and everywhere else. You won't be able to get on the website without seeing it. That's already
That's
apparent.
great. That's great. Thank you. I would like, if this may be too sticky to ask, Mary Lou, what is our split in the Methodist Church going to do to our global ministries into UMCOR? Do we know yet?
I don't know. We are an agency of the United Methodist Church, and the one thing our board has decided, as conferences in Europe have disaffiliated as a conference, which they can do, we can't do that in the United States. Programs of the advance that were designed to support the United Methodist Church in, for example, Bulgaria, with there being no United Methodist Church, those advances will close. And should the Global Methodist Church have a concordant agreement, as so many other denominations do with the United Methodist Church, then we'll consider other ways of supporting those projects. But until the bishops and the ecumenical group of the church decide there will be an agreement, we won't be in a position to support those projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The same thing could be said about the other 3 program agencies.
Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions?
Well, I have a comment. This is the time of year where everybody is bombarded by opportunities to give to charitable causes. It's pretty much all we get in the mail anymore. And so many of those are questionable in a way that maybe a large percentage of the money goes to the marketing operation, or some of them are just outright scams. And this is an opportunity to give to something that's safe, where we know the money we give is going to go to the cause. And that is really not always the case, even with very widely publicized charities and opportunities. So I think having confidence is a huge thing.
Yeah, 100% of gifts given to any of the programs in advance, for example, go to the designated project, and they are evaluated and audited and vetted before they even become a project. And so I think that is one thing that the United Methodist Church has done very, very well.
Any other comments or questions that you might have about any of these programs? We had thought about adding a section to the catalog on volunteering time associated with some of these projects, and really had looked forward to that as an opportunity. We backed off on that because we knew that there were other ways to volunteer time at the church, and we didn't want to interfere with other people asking you to volunteer time. But we're hoping that some of these will spur your interest in volunteering time with some of these programs. And I know it certainly has for me. And if any of these programs look like things that you would like to become engaged in, I hope you will think about these as not just opportunities for giving your money, but also your time. They all need that as much and maybe more than they need your money, although they need your money too.
Since I am moderating, I will just jump in here and express our deep appreciation to everything that you have put in today's program, Joan, and to all of the speakers. It was very enlightening. It's amazing all of the opportunities that we have open to us to participate in, either financially or in person. Before we close out altogether, I want to remind everybody that next Sunday we will be in the sanctuary. We'll gather there at 9:30 for Michael Dauterman to present Music of Advent. And this will be an opportunity to continue the tradition that he has established doing this. Joan, is there anything else that we should add?
No, I think that's for those of you who would want to be on Zoom. I understand there will be a Zoom connection for that section. It'll be a streaming session.
Yeah, it'll be streaming through the church's facilities, and we'll get out information on how to access that.
So the point is, if you're not able to come to the church, there will be an avenue for you to hear that session and look for the information about that. And then the following two sessions will also be, or the session following will also be the same way. Is that right? In the fellowship hall?
Yes, our hope is those may be Zoom, but we'll let you know which will be streamed on YouTube and which will be Zoom.
And
Right.
I wanted to add that it's so significant that this powerful issue of Glenn's involvement in the world and ministry happens on Advent 1. For
Yes.
me, Advent is every day, theologically. And I think that's why this is a really significant meeting that we've had. And I want to thank everyone who's been involved with it. Thank you. Advent is here.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Don.
Well, Joan, if you would close our meeting with prayer, we would be grateful.
I will do that. Oh God, our hearts are heavy with the burdens of all your children affected by chaos who live in need and sorrow, and we pray your continuing mercies. We ask that it's in this season of hustle and bustle, you give us instead hope-filled steps toward love, joy, and peace. Bind us close to our community of faith and reveal to us your will. Shine light on our paths as we seek to share your grace. Amen.
Thank you. Well, if there are no further comments, we will end this session and, just want to remind everybody that this will be available online for anyone you talk to who was not able to be with us today.
Yeah, I'll get the link out as usual, and everybody's encouraged to share it, of course, widely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Susan.
Thank you. It's good to, I've been here in the empty spaces for the heads. I didn't know how to get my video back on. So
Thank you to my speakers.
yes, thanks to our wonderful speakers.
We're glad to see you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
And bye, everybody. See you later.